Whilst the strengths of Warhammer 3 have consistently changed over time, the two worst things I've commonly cited that cause a majority of campaign problems and probably the loss of player base are the auto-resolve and siege battles. But ironically, one of the best things about the auto-resolve problems is it lets you completely skip most siege battles, meaning you don't have to persevere through them. Sieges are so divisive, we can't even as a community decide how much we hate them or which things we hate most. It is a multifaceted, fantastic piece of gaming that we can really delve into, because what makes a perfect siege is going to be different from person to person, but we're consistently finding things. I'll cross-check this with Reddit and other places of data to see if I can address realistically most of the problems we have with sieges, and the key word here is being realistic. We have problems like map design and whatnot. That's not going to happen or be addressed, but what I'm going to do is go through 7 key points here, and they dovetail from one to the other because we have a bit of compounding effect here, with one problem creating a larger problem for the next issue. But I'm going to list fixes for each of these issues as we go through them, or at least suggestions that I think are actually realistic and not too time expensive, because also I want that Bretonnia rework, I want all those Cathayan dragons, there's so much more content. We just want these to be playable and enjoyable, and after this I'm going to do another video on the 5 features we need the most to get Warhammer 3 to finally reach its potential. So let's jump into key issue number 1, and that is pathfinding. As someone who teaches the game, it is so disheartening, so disheartening that you need to actually have a lot of skill and understand the movement system so intricately just to place units in this game. I mean, you need to be able to hold Alt and left click to move a unit around, hold Control to pivot it, to get it anywhere near where you want. And this is the key problem. I'm holding Alt and left click, and look at this. You see how it starts to bump up against the building and then it just disappears. It should stay there. Let's go back to TotalWar Attila. This is still the same game engine as Warhammer 3. If I try to drag a unit, it is far less clunky. Look at this. As I wheel it round, it automatically condenses and allows the unit to stretch out. This is so much more user-friendly. Also, if I left click and hold Alt, the unit is far more pliable. It basically usually will move around somewhere else, and yeah, it's a little bit janky, but it doesn't completely vanish in the majority of cases. As long as it can be placed, it will be placed. It's also far more forgiving. In Warhammer 3, you have to be a good distance away from anything that can be collided with to even start stretching your line out. You can get right up next to the wall. It honestly breaks my heart seeing people just hate these sieges because their units just derp around. They just can't navigate their units. They can't even draw. Enemy cavalry are coming down this way. Okay, let's just set up a wide line. Oh, I can't even set this wide line up. I've got to set it here, then twist it here. Let's get another unit to flank. I can't get it to stretch out. There we go. It is so clunky. Please go to Attila style unit placement, and that would make so much difference. Even since launch, getting archers to stand on a point where they can shoot and fire and they can't even aim over, and getting them positioned to a point where they will get an accurate line of fire can be an absolute mission that only a veteran would be able to navigate. After passing through a choke point, you might want to widen your cavalry to maximize your charge, but even that is clunky. I'm trying to right click and drag, and it just does not always work. I'm often making the line shorter than when I first started. CA must have invested so much time and money developing these large full 360 maps with all these new mechanics, and it's a shame for them. I understand, and it took them so long to just finally let us stop playing them. And I get it. I mean, it's like us as YouTubers. Sometimes you put in your heart and soul into a video and it doesn't do well. It's a free market, that's life, and unfortunately sieges are just that as well. Player experience matters most, and finally they've listened to people. They don't have rebuildable towers. That was a huge improvement, as well as making it so the garrison building on minor settlements is required to actually turn it into a settlement battle. This actually was a great move. It was fantastic. This gave the useless garrison building some purpose, as well as greatly reduced the number of settlement battles we need to fight. I love fixes that solve multiple issues, so a big thumbs up there. They also added more places to put towers and made them so you can't rebuild them again, and that was a great change, but it's not quite fully stepped in the direction it needs to be. More on that later. Issue 2. The in-battle building system is very arcade-like and incredibly divisive. It's not actually that divisive. I really don't see too many fans of it. Spoiler alert, later in the video, I'm going to talk about how them taking too long is one of the big problems of sieges, but each of these fixes will help the battles conclude much more concisely, particularly melee armies that have to navigate the pipework of streets whilst they're getting shot, just having new towers appear, but more importantly, barricades. You can be walking all the way to one point just to have a magical barricade rise in front of you, you go the other way, and then another one boxes you in, and this often happens well into the battle when it is already won and it is just tedious. I mean, as long as I'm holding this node right here, I could just have built a barricade and block this unit of gore herds, meaning they then have to either spend a while knocking it down or going all the way around. So the question is, how do we rework the supply system? And quite simply, you get more points to use at the beginning of the battle. As the enemy besieges you, you'll take some attrition and maybe gather some extra supplies. Using TotalWar Attila again as another example, whilst we don't have placeable towers, we do have placeable barricades placed at the beginning of the battle. Your supplies would dictate how many deployable things you have. Issue number 3 is capture points. Capturing points of the map in the middle of a battle and how that interacts. I mean, presently you have a capture point and just taking it will automatically make any building connected to it just drop like a dead horse. And it's really divisive. I've got a few ways of making this a little bit better. Of course, being local to the tower to disable it would make a lot more sense. I'm not sure if that's possible. But how about this? The supply location does exactly that, supplies it. Once you've taken this tower has maybe 30 seconds of ammunition before it runs out, and then it's a sitting duck. By retaking the supply node, we can then recommence taking it, but right now it's just dropped because I stepped on the right piece of pavement for the right amount of time. It's not very immersive, and again it couples into point number 2, where an arbitrary point over here can stop you getting through over here. Now, capture points also provide another opportunity where they should have a much bigger bearing on the overall morale of the battle. I would greatly welcome a sliding scale. If the defender owns over 90% of their own nodes, then that's great. They're feeling good, they can maybe get a leadership bump, but if they've lost 3/4 of them, that is a compounding effect that should get worse and worse. I mean, yes, we do have the victory ticket system, but I've never been a big fan of that. I like to defeat the army on the battlefield, and maybe having more leadership modifiers based around the control of the city itself would mean the battle is more widespread, a bit more tense, and it would really feel like the city's been conquered or saved. I mean, look at this. We even had someone complaining on Reddit that they couldn't even lose when they tried. Like, we need a better system. Issue number 4, well, I've already said it. They take too long. When they should be done, they should be done. Often the first half of a siege is actually quite enjoyable. It's when it gets to the point you're just chasing down random units trying to enforce the army penalty on what is a clearly unwinnable battle. I mean, here we have beastmen running away with elven loot. They've just lost most of the city. It's all been taken over. Hope is lost. Fair enough, we have a couple of major units, but I mean, I could even lose these and the army would still hold out. Once the battle is lost, it is lost. Please, Creative Assembly, let these end. Issue number 5, the fort towers. That is the towers connected to your primary wall. And the thing about these things, okay, I agree with the design aspect of needing an infantryman on there because it gives you cause to actually bring your infantry up. However, it does kind of get mitigated somewhat by arse ladders because you don't have a single point to defend. But let's keep this focused right now on the fort towers. The range on them is absolutely absurd, and then they have this goofy firing arc. This basically limits every single battle you have because all you do is look around and see which ones of these can I get hit by the least. But it's the obnoxious range and the arc which is both a hindrance to the attacker and the defender. If it is an actual tower with multiple firing points, it should be able to fire in a 360-degree direction, meaning you would have a proper scrap up here on the walls, and you should be able to hold them a lot better than you do. Again, arse ladders having fewer points that reach the walls mean you would be able to push them away and keep that distance. But so often the first 3 plebs that climb up here, the tower falls out of your control and away you go. But having it being able to pepper enemy units whilst you hold the walls, now that is value right there. But in some points the tower reaches almost to the edge of the map. You can't even deploy down here. Like, why even bother having this part of the map? Having these shorter would just give you more room to move, more options as the attacker, and would make defending a whole lot more interesting. Issue number 6, everyone's favourite, and that is arse ladders, the ability for every single unit, regardless of being infantry, a lord, a hero, to just magically conjure a ladder from their rear end and then scale the walls with it. Now, on its own, I like the ability for infantry to still be relevant in the late game, but the problem this presents is the walls are basically useless because you just can't hold them. Every single unit can go over them, so they may as well not be there. This certainly takes away from the grandeur and the defensive posturing that walls are meant to have. I mean, historically, walls were huge deterrents, and they do virtually nothing here. Now, CA have stated they have some serious AI constraints when trying to get the AI to function without the arse ladders being there. I wonder if there's a middle ground, and this is my rework suggestion. Now, my solution would be for every maybe 5 infantry, you get 1 ladder, not 5 units, 5 infantry units, not including lords, not including heroes. This would mean you would need 15 infantry to get 3 free arse ladders. This is a sizable investment, and we could even tighten it even more, maybe only 5 melee infantry. Melee infantry maybe get the siege ladder ability, meaning for every 5 units you get 1 free ladder at the beginning of the battle. So this means an army like this, just say you want to go full late game Doomstack with Blackhawks, but you don't have to carry around 1 catapult. Like, that will get honestly quite tedious, because my biggest concern with making ladders completely buildable is late game infantry will be completely useless. There will be no reason to bring them, because why would you slow yourself down? Taking 1 settlement a turn is absolutely key, particularly in the later tiers of the game. Who is going to employ infantry when they need to take an extra turn to take a settlement? I think that that's way too restrictive, but like I said, 5 units, 1 ladder, another 5, another. If you only have 4, sorry, you only get 2. You'll have to stay and build those over the next turn. But this isn't just for infantry doomstacks. In the later game, you might want a couple of giants, a couple of dragons, maybe some flying cavalry. How the hell are your infantry going to get up if you have to build a ladder? They're going to have to sit out of every single siege battle, so you just won't bring them. The new system needs at least some method of getting ladders on the same turn you besiege. Now, let's talk about animations. Lastly, it would be really nice to see them carrying the ladder and it not just magically appearing out of their ass, but are they really going to be able to animate a carrying animation for every single unit? I don't think so. I think the fair workaround and compromise is having a ladder icon above said unit carrying the ladder. When they die, they drop a physical ladder, which you can see, and then that can be claimed by another unit to bring it to the wall. I know it's really cheap what I'm suggesting, but call me a pessimist. I'm working with what I think the resources allocated will be, and I think this is at least sounds like an inexpensive fix. I might be wrong. I cannot imagine what it must be like trying to deal with AI that must deal with choke points with some units, and then flying units which can just bypass and break all those rules. I'm guessing that also creates other issues, but if they could make this work, I'd be really happy. One of the biggest problems of arse ladders is it really strips you of creativity when it comes to deploying your units. Wouldn't it be so great and thematic to have your mighty elven archers firing off the walls? But the reality is, you can't. What I would love to see is which one of these units has the ladder icon above their head. Then I know, are they coming to this point in the wall? Well, in that case, let's move our archers back out of the way and we'll move our spears up. Let's intercept that. Issue number 7 is one I don't hear too often, and it's about the campaign map and the interplay of the sieges onto the grand campaign map. And the issue is, consequently, because of, I guess a lot of it is because of arse ladders, but just generally, siege weapons are not that useful and there's not that much use to bring them. You maybe might need 1 to take out a tower, but honestly, more than that, you just don't really need to bring them. Would it not be great if there was a simple logic of, I need to take a fort, let's bring a trebuchet, but it doesn't quite work like that. But currently, I see 2 key issues that really hinder the usefulness of siege weapons in campaign. One is that legendary lords now all gain the siege attacker trait. Now, I understand why they brought this in, and I don't know whether they should keep it or not. I believe every legendary lord should start with an army capable of siege attacker, may it be through an artillery piece, a monster, or a mount they are on. They should all start with that capability, but should they just get it because they're a legendary lord? I'm not quite sure. I'll leave that one up to you guys, but the fact they can all do it means you don't need siege equipment, right? The writing is on the wall. The fact that you can just give it to a foot lord because goes to show that we don't need the siege equipment. I mean, should we need a battering ram to knock down gates? Would that slow the game down too much? Or is that maybe what it needs? The fact is the game goes way too quickly in the early terms and it becomes trivial. I'll address this in my next video and how to fix that. But currently the game goes fast enough as it is. It wouldn't hurt for a bit of a slowdown, but maybe some people like it fast. Then I'll let you guys decide in the comments. What do you guys think about removing the siege attacker trait on lords and also battering rams? The other issue is gates. Should gates be destroyable by every single unit, or should only particular units with siege attacker be able to knock them down? At first glance, I somewhat like the idea of certain infantry units in each roster having the capability of knocking down walls. Not the basic ones to the main settlement building, but maybe one infantry unit in each tier to be able to get siege attacker and actually knock down the gate physically. I know CA are currently working on some form of siege rework, and I want to say that I think the changes they made so far have all been for the better, but we need a bit more, and the ultimate goal is, I think, make them quicker, tighter, and not drag on. I think those things, as well as more realistic, if those things can be attained from one way or another, then I think we'd be a whole lot happier. Just make them less grindy and just feel a little bit more epic. So I hope that's helped, guys. Feel free to agree, disagree. I'm not completely married to any of my beliefs, so please feel free to say what you like or hate. And if the developers are seeing this, yeah, I think this seemed like a pretty good collection of the thoughts I've seen. The problems were the ones I've seen. The solutions are mostly just ones I've thought of, so take them with a grain of salt. But yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.